What's up guys, Rewiewz here and welcome to the return of Gaming Rewind with a special on the Philips CDI. The Philips CDI was Philips' only involvement in the video game industry, and what a doomed tale it was. Full of marketing mismanagement, poor user interface and more importantly, terrible games. But before we have a look at the console itself, we have to start at the beginning with Nintendo. Back in the early 90s when Nintendo was looking to develop a CD-ROM based add-on for the Super Nintendo, they turned to Sony, who had already worked on a sound chip for the SNES, to create what will be known as the Nintendo PlayStation, which will play both Super Nintendo games as well as Sony's own CD-ROM games. After Sony managed to gain publishing rights to the CD-ROM software on the Super Nintendo, Nintendo, fearing the loss of quality control, decided to end its agreement with Sony without their knowledge and instead enter into a partnership with Philips, who would create a new CD-ROM attachment for the SNES, as well as Nintendo aiding Philips in the creation of their own console, the Philips CDI, which had been in development since the early 80s, with Nintendo characters being licensed for use for the CDI games. A decision I'm sure Nintendo regrets to this day. Even though the SNES CD-ROM attachment failed to materialise, the Philips CDI was eventually released in 1991 with a retail price of around $400. Even upon release, the Philips CDI had its back against the wall. Sold in high-end electronic stores, Philips saw its machine as an educational tool first and a video games console second. The CDI focused on educational titles like Compton's Encyclopedia and music like Todd Rundgren's No World Order CD, where users could customize the album in any way they wished. The few games that were released in its early years were mainly video game versions of board games such as Connect 4 and Backgammon, and simply could not compete with the technical superiority of the Super Nintendo and Sega Mega Drive. By 1994, sales of the CDI had slowed, and Philips decided on a new marketing campaign. This time they decided to rebrand the CDI as a games console, give the machine a redesign, and embarked on an aggressive promotion which tried to position the CDI as a multimedia revolution that can not only play video games, but also video CDs as well. Despite the promotional drive, which saw the CDI marketed via infomercial, usually at night because that's the time when people pick up the phone, sales of the console still faltered. Remember when I talked about the deal between Nintendo and Philips, which allowed Philips to use Nintendo characters? Well, Philips took full advantage of the deal with the release of such gems like Hotel Mario, a puzzle game which involved Mario having to close doors in hotel stages for some reason, and free entries into the Legend of Zelda series, with Link the Phases of Evil, Zelda the Wand of Gamelon, and Zelda's Adventure. Despite initial critical praise, these games have garnered almost universal negative opinion in retrospect, with these Zelda games not considered canon in the franchise. Although the Philips CDI had many bad games, there were one or two decent titles, such as full-motion video interactive affairs like Burn Cycle and Thunder in Paradise. Even ports of Dragon's Lair and Mad Dog McCree were released. In later years, Philips' attempt to gain a foothold in the video game market were rendered useless by the release of far more powerful and more importantly cheaper consoles like the Nintendo 64 and Sony PlayStation. If the Philips CDI struggled to hold its own against the Super Nintendo and Mega Drive, it could never hope to compete with the Nintendo 64 and PlayStation. Having had little success with video games, the CDI went back to concentrating on application software with encyclopedias and learning games for children. By 1998, Philips discontinued production of the CDI and never again entered into the video game industry. Upon looking back at the system, the CDI had some interesting ideas, some of which will translate into the modern age. The idea of a multimedia system capable of playing games, CDs and video can be seen in Nintendo, Sony and Microsoft's consoles. However, the two main problems of the CDI is one of time and identity. The system began development in 1984 and wasn't released until 1991, so by the time of its release, the technology was old and was not able to technically match other offerings from rivals. When the CDI did release, nobody knew what it was. Was it a games console? Was it a computer? Philips decided to market their system for educational software, but when that didn't work, they switched gears to focus on video games. But by that point it was too little too late. The damage had already been done. The Philips CDI is a cautionary tale of what mismarketing and poor branding can do to a product, and is a significant chapter in video game history, telling the tale of an electronics distributor caught in a power struggle between two gaming giants. Well, that does it for this special look at the Philips CDI. Thanks so much for watching. Next week will be my first review of 2013 of the classic Sega game Shenmue, so watch out for that. Subscribe for more retro gaming goodness, and until next time, peace out guys.